Welcome to the Prove It podcast, where we let go of proving to the world and start proving what's possible. I'm your host, Michaela, prosperity coach, purpose-driven entrepreneur, and woman of faith. This is for the ones who dare to prosper differently, who choose calling over conformity, purpose over pressure, and alignment with divine design over hustle culture. Through honest conversations and transformative stories, we'll explore what happens when you stop chasing approval and start becoming who you were always meant to be. Because your worth isn't up for debate, but how you live, that's where you prove it. I am so excited to have Alicia Wood here today joining us. Alicia is the owner of Align Academy, where she helps moms find alignment through a career in tech. She is also the co-founder of the Preparedness Project, where they help women who belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints with all things preparedness, spiritual and temporal. So Alicia, I am just so excited to have a conversation with you today. I want you to start out by telling us your story.
Oh, it's so fun to chat with you, Michaela. So I guess Preparedness Project was something that started before Align in 2020. I was pregnant and 2020 happened. The world was just struggling, and started to go in a lot of fear of like not having prepared based on what our church leaders had asked us for years, and just kind of went into this panic mode. Started preparing, learned a lot, and then realized like this was not the good way to do it. But I felt really strongly to start a neighborhood group in my neighborhood, and we had a small group of women that met every couple of weeks, and we started preparing like step by step. And long story short, there was a few of us that like were just kind of constants in the group, and we were like, we need to do this and help more women because there's just something so special about this. And we had never seen something so like moderate in the extreme world we were living in, especially during that time. I mean, it's still kind of part of our world, right? Anyways, so we started that, and then it's been a cool process to see kind of how the Lord has magnified our very imperfect and minimal efforts in crazy ways. But then, long story short, I was going through a divorce, had bought a house, and then I was wrestling with like, how do I pay my mortgage? I had a couple months of runway of emergency fund, but I hit a point where I was like, Heavenly Father, what am I supposed to do? Like, Preparedness Project is not making enough money yet. How do I provide for my family? I know I'm on the right track, but I'll go Uber, I'll go do something else. But like, I just knew I was supposed to do these things and didn't really know how it was going to work. Anyways, long story short, through a series of probably more miracles than I've ever experienced in such a short time, I had a woman reach out on LinkedIn looking for help in how to further her education in technology and wanted my opinion because I've kind of had a wide array of my past life, my career in tech, just all over the place. And so people reach out a lot and they're like, what do I do? So, yeah, I guess long story short, over the course of like a month, I developed a 6-month curriculum, got 9 women in, and it was truly by the grace of God. And like, it's just kind of been that way since. It hasn't been without a lot of struggle. I kind of was hoping that, like, since it started that way, that it would keep going, but it hasn't always been the case.
Yeah, I feel like that's not the case usually. I feel like so often we look at other people and we just see the highlight reel, you know? It's like, oh man, they did that so quickly and so easily and nothing went wrong. That's usually not how it works, right? The part of your story that stands out to me the most when you tell it right now is that you said you felt like God had called you to do something. You said that you felt like you were supposed to be doing these things. And I feel like so many of us have those moments and they are really scary because it's stepping into the unknown. And you also brought up so many miracles, right? You talked about like how there were so many miracles. So I am wondering how you went from, okay, I feel called to do something here and I know I'm on the right track, to then taking that step and just going for it.
Really good question. Honestly, it's like making me a little bit emotional just thinking about it because like I'm in the thick of it right now, and it's so easy to kind of like forget those moments. But then when I say it, I'm like it's obvious. But how did I just like go for it? Well, honestly, I think like when you were asking that, the thing that popped into my head is that I reached a point kind of when I was partway through Preparedness Project. It was kind of just like fun, and like who knows if it would ever gonna actually take off or whatever. We're like, this was just cool to spend time together and whatever. When I started navigating a divorce and like very unexpected, and I'd received some like really clear impressions from God about very specific things, and it made me listen to every prompting that I was like cling to and seek for like these promptings. And like I acted immediately because I was so maybe desperate is the word, I don't know, to like really do what I could in my marriage that was crumbling. And I didn't know what was going to happen, but it was such a turning point in my life where I was like, I'm so deep in with God at this point that I'm not going to say no to a prompting at this point, no matter how scary. And I had some scary and like very confusing promptings, and I still wrestled with like, was that a prompting or was that not, But I don't know, I think it was just such like a turning point in my life that like I've needed at this point because I've had to take a lot of risks with business. Like financially, it's been in a time where I've felt the most like insecure and unstable financially. And yeah, I mean, that's been one aspect of it. And then the other blessing too is with Preparedness Project, my co-founder and co-founders before, like it was always a priority to like bring God back into it. It always was. Like it was never like our way. And we kind of had to because there was three of us and then two of us, like, how do you reach unity without God? I really don't know how people do that. So that's like a huge thing too, is like we would just like God would help unify us. And even when it didn't make sense, we would just move forward with what we felt.
I think about what you said about, just following those promptings and kind of getting into that habit. When I think about when we kind of get in this habit of trying to prove our worth, which is a negative form of proving, and we actually don't need to prove our worth because it's inherent and it's unchanging, versus what you were doing, which was proving your faith. And that's so powerful because I really, really feel that that builds so much trust with God, and it just builds that deep relationship. And then you keep going and you keep acting in that, and then He's going to give you more and more. And I just love that you have been able to bring Him into business. Like, this is also something that I have been pondering a lot about the past few months. Is I think so often we put God in a box, and it's, He's over here and everything else is over here, when we need to bring him into all the other stuff. So I think you've done a really, really great job of that.
Sometimes it's like once you're that deep in, it's like, I don't know what else I would do.
Can you recall any specific moments? I don't know if you relate to that feeling of needing to like prove your worth, prove yourself, whether it's through success or, achievements, or even by serving others or being good enough, any of those things. Can you think back on a time when you were kind of stuck in that?
Yeah, well, it's just funny because you reached out to talk about this. The last few weeks have just been such an interesting few weeks for me and have really put me through the ringer in like a deep way. Like, I'm just gonna be real. Like I've never really wanted to quit my businesses until like this last week. One of them at least. Like I never had really experienced that. I had wrestled with stuff before, but I just had felt so much confidence that I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do. But this last week has been really hard. And I've really found myself leaning into that wrestle of, is what I'm doing actually helping others? Is it helping me become more of who I'm supposed to be? And like it's really made me question, am I doing the right thing? Different interactions and experiences I've had with people have kind of brought to the surface for me. I feel like there's bad parts of me. I don't know, it sounds kind of weird, but like that there's like these parts that I'm like, how do these people see me in such a negative light when like I'm trying my best to like do what God wants and serve them at a high level, which I've found that that's sometimes holding like hard boundaries, like in a very uncomfortable way with people that I care about, friends, family members, like, and so it's really caused a lot of like self-doubt in myself these last few weeks where I deep down know that it's the right step, but it doesn't make sense. Like I had an experience, I'm trying to be careful because I want to protect, confidentiality, but I had an experience where I had someone in one of my programs that had joined, and from the beginning, I felt really strongly to really be flexible payment wise. And she became a good friend of mine. It wasn't any form of enabling in my mind. I really felt congruent with it. And usually I'll get resentful if I don't have in that. So I knew that it was totally congruent. And then I was about to give her access to the new version of my program, and it wouldn't work. Technically, it didn't work. And then I had this impression, don't give her access and revoke her old access because she hadn't paid. And I was like, I know what she's navigating right now. She's navigating a lot. It was so different because it was like all of a sudden the impression changed after quite a bit of time. And I told her kind of what I was feeling. She wasn't very happy with it, understandably, right? Because I was shifting how I was showing up. And I felt myself backpedaling because I was trying to prove like, we can make this work, but I was like totally going against what I had felt from God. I just realized that I was believing a lie. I needed to align myself back with what I felt to be true, even though it felt so scary. And so then I just stood firm. And after that experience, I had like, I kid you not, like 4 or 5 experiences in the last 2 weeks that have been very similar to that. And it's been so uncomfy because I feel like there's this wrestle of wanting to prove to these people, I'm like, no, I promise this is for your good. This is what I feel like God wants. But I felt like that's not beneficial to tell people. At least in most cases, I found it's not been very helpful. And so, yeah, I think there's just this deep part of me that of like insecurity. That, am I doing the right thing? And I've needed so much more validation, I feel like, from loved ones and friends that know where my heart is, you know? So yeah, I mean, when I think of proving, I feel like I've been more in that energy than I want to. And I found myself almost do certain things like, how do I help this person to someone else that knows them? But deep down, I'm realizing, oh, that's just to try to get the other person to see me in a good light.
Yes, I completely relate to that almost like crazy incessant need to prove, yeah, that like I'm a good person, wanting people to see you in a good light and to, keep that view of you, that perception of you that you want them to have.
I know. I didn't realize I cared so much, but I do.
Yeah, and then you spoke to the validation, the external validation that you are seeking in those moments, right? And I feel like it's very interesting that you've had them come up one after the other.
Literally. I'm like, what is this?
And I feel like sometimes, those are opportunities that we're given, right? If it's something that, okay, this is the next thing that I need to be working on to kind of overcome this, and maybe you weren't aware of it that it was an issue, but being able to have those opportunities and learn. You talk about the boundaries, and I love that, and I would like to talk more about that. I feel like boundaries for a lot of people are really, really difficult for lots of different reasons, but in order to protect your peace and protect yourself, they are necessary, and you're kind of just like being pushed into the deep end with that right now, right?
Literally. I feel like I'm drowning, kind of. A lot of tears. And truly, it's been so cool to see. I feel like even just a couple days ago, I was in a totally different spot, but I've really started to realize, I don't know, I've done a lot of work with boundaries. I've gone to like 12-step meetings to talk about, but I've done a lot of work for many years. But when you actually practice it, I feel like it's just so different. The interesting thing that I've really started to realize, there's like this meme or reel that has been going around the internet about parenting. At least I talked to a couple friends about this. When you do something for your kids that they can do for themselves, it's because of your own insecurities. So it's about like how when you do stuff for your kids, like it's helping your self-confidence, but like hurting theirs, you know? And I feel like as a parent, actually, I feel like most of the time, maybe I'm inflating myself, but I feel like I do a pretty good job, honestly. My son is becoming very independent and it's so fun, but he still asks for help, it's not hyper independence. So it's been really interesting as I've been observing it through that lens with all that I've been navigating in business because I have so many insecurities. With parenting, I don't have insecurities about making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or doing the laundry. I'm like, who cares? I want him to learn how to do those things. But in my business, I'm like, am I doing enough? Like, am I charging the right amount? Am I, like, am I serving them at a high enough level? Am I helping them transform, all the doubts. And so it's interesting as I've started to like have these boundaries with people. At first, I thought it was just for them. Like that was kind of the impression that I had. Like the first couple people that these were happening. It's been around money the last couple weeks. Where like it's like, oh no, this will be for them, this will be for them. Like whether or not it will like help them immediately or they'll someday thank you, who knows, right? It may or may not happen, but I just felt distinctly it's for them. But as I've been navigating it more, I realized that I was enabling so many people more than I realized out of my own insecurities. And it's almost this boundary of pulling back my energy to actually serve in a deeper way, which has been so mind-blowing to me because I've been doing more for these people that I was stressed that I wasn't doing enough. That was actually like hindering them in their growth. And the more that I've leaned into, no, you will not get a refund. That's scary. When I know your life situation close enough to know that you don't have the money to pay. But like, it's those moments that in my own life have been transformative. And not saying that everyone will take that, but it's an opportunity, right? And so it's not only helping them ascend, but it's helping me serve in a deeper way from a more secure place, less proving, which I don't know. It's just been mind blowing. I've never thought about boundaries in that way before, but it's been so interesting to see. And I'm sad. I'm like, wow, I want to have better boundaries so that I can serve in a higher way. And it's almost made me restructure one of my programs entirely to be like, how do I remove myself from being in the middle of their growth?
It reminds me of this quote that I think is from Ezra Taft Benson. He said, "The Lord works from the inside out. The world works from the outside in. The world would take people out of the slums. Christ takes the slums out of people, and then they take themselves out of the slums. The world would mold men by changing their environment. Christ changes men, who then change their environment. The world would shape human behavior, but Christ can change human nature." And I just love that so much because I think that's what you're talking about with parenting. And I've never made that correlation between that in parenting and like business, and that is mind blowing. But then to see how this works even on a spiritual level and how it's so important for people to be able to learn that, for themselves and not be enabled, right? I probably don't do as good of a job as you in the parenting aspect of that. I'm like, just let me do it for you, or don't do that, it's dangerous, and I don't let them learn.
Oh, I still do it with the dangerous thing. Like maybe I'm not doing as well as I think.
I wanted to bring up your stories today that I saw. You talked about this friend group that you have kind of found recently and
Uh-huh.
how you have a text group with them now. And
Mhm.
every day you text what miracles you saw that day. I was wondering if you would like to share your experience with that. How has that changed you? How long have you been doing it? And just since I've known you, I feel like you have done a really good job of that already, just noticing and recognizing God's hand in your life. But then to have it be this daily thing, how has that impacted you?
I love that. I love that you saw it. Yeah, it's really interesting. I didn't even start it. One of the girls that I met did. And so she was going through a hard time too. She started this, she just was like, oh, do you guys want to be in this group? The three of them are roommates and they added me in. And I was like, yay, I get to be a part of this. And I seriously love them all. They're amazing. Being able to do it every night at like 8, she'll text miracle moment time without fail almost every single night. And whenever I don't get a text at 8, I'm like, what's going on? She's probably just hanging out with someone. But to be able to reflect on it has been so impactful to me. And mostly I don't know them super well, these girls, but it's been really cool as we've shared our miracles, how it's just been like this vulnerable conversation. One of them just got engaged, another's been through a couple breakups. I mean, I'm in the midst of dating post-divorce. Sometimes that comes up, but not always. It's just been interesting being able to share these things. And sometimes I have to seek, like I am good at noticing, but some days it's like, what was the miracle? It's been a really good practice for me to just do that because even just typing it out and being accountable, I mean, accountability is so huge for so many things, but being accountable to do that has been so cool. And just how encouraging everyone else is in the group. It's literally the coolest thing. I know everyone should do it.
It's where you start thinking about the car, right? You're going car shopping and you want this certain car. And then all of a sudden you start seeing them everywhere. And that has been my experience with being intentional about recognizing God's hand in my life. I feel like it can be hard to see it some days or in the beginning when you're trying to look for that evidence. Because they're not always going to be huge miracles. They're not always going to be these really super evident things that are happening. Most of the time, they're just these tender mercies.
Mhm.
And the more that you start recognizing those, though, and writing them down, like you said, like typing it out, writing them down, being accountable, I feel like the more they just start popping up. And whether you're actually getting more of them or just seeing more of them, right? And I would argue that it's probably more of the latter. That they're always there and they're all around us and that they are so much more numerous than we think. It's like the scripture, you have to have the eyes to see.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I've actually thought a lot about co-creating miracles with the Lord the last few months. I was part of this program that was entitled Art of Impossible and like kind of creating impossible business goals, but bringing God into it. And there was this app that we used that you could basically see everyone would like, write out their prayers and you could share your prayers with people. It was so cool. I'm like, I want to make an app like that. It's kind of like a masculine app, but I'm like, this would be so cool because it was so powerful to be able to see the prayers that these other incredible women, just powerhouse women that were like praying. Through that process, I started to seek more in the middle of miracles because we were trying to create these impossible business goals, like setting like a specific revenue number and getting clear on where we wanted to be. And it was interesting because I started to realize that we're always in the miracle. Like, and I get chills as I say that because I really started to look for that more. It's interesting how even a couple weeks ago I had an experience where like, I kind of had a weird morning. We kind of got out of the house later than I was hoping. Just one thing after another, just kind of weird. And I just felt off. And then I had this crazy miracle happen. And the timing of just how things perfectly lined up was crazy. You're like, okay, this and this and this and this and this all needed to happen. And it was an off morning. Like, how did that work, And in that program, especially like, leaning into our power to co-create with the Lord and how our efforts before that also led to that point. And the more that we give weight to those, I've been doing all the things, even if I haven't seen it, that is still adding to like the pot of faith or whatever you want to call it, to create that miracle. I really believe we have so much more power to create miracles with the Lord, or maybe it's just turning towards Him and seeing them, right? I think it's a combination of both. We're so much more powerful than we realize, like so much more. And I'm just starting to understand it.
I want to talk about your Align Academy that you started. You talk about alignment so much in that business. You're not just teaching moms how to code and how to build apps. Tell me why that is such an important piece for you.
I guess for backstory, like I had been in tech for like over 10 years in like the full-time industry. I'd been at like some really big tech companies. I taught at BYU as a professor. And like through my time there, I just like there aren't many women in tech, but like that being said, like I just kind of felt like I was learning these skills for a reason, but I didn't really know why. And like it just felt like something was off, you know. But I didn't even really realize how off it felt until insight, you know. And then I was like, whoa, why is alignment so important to me? I think it's because like I saw like year after year working in that industry and realizing like, okay, there's something that I naturally have been gifted with these tech skills, but like I've never been able to really find a place that feels like it resonates with me. You know, like I would go to these like women in tech meetings and it would be like just this like amazing women but like very masculine, very like climbing the corporate ladder, which used to be me. Like I used to really have aspirations like that because I thought that was kind of like what you had to do. But I think with just my life kind of falling apart, honestly, it made me reevaluate everything and I realized I want to live my priorities and I thought that I had been living my priorities, but I wasn't actually living them. And I realized how hard it was to actually live your priorities. And so through my program with the alignment, I think it's just so interesting because I believe it's a false belief that like in order to like live our purpose or to live like, what we need to do, like we have to do it in like this um like way that sacrifices the most important things. I think sacrifice is required. Like I think that's definitely a part of life and coming closer to God and who we are 100%. But like sacrificing the things that are most important, I don't think that's actually like unintentionally sacrificing, you know, like if we're asked to sacrifice it, fine. And so I guess for me, once I started being like, okay, I want to teach these women technology, but it feels like I would be leaving out such an important piece of it. And I feel like I will fail if women go into the tech space and think, oh, well, I just have to sacrifice time with my kids, or I have to do this because everyone else is doing it this way. I love the mix of those two and being manifesting generator. It's gotta hit all the parts of me, you know, I can't just be this one little spot.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love talking human design and all the personality things with you too. It's the best. I love that. And I love that you're almost like proving in a positive way that these things can coexist, right? It doesn't have to be one without the other, that it doesn't have to look this certain way and fit this certain mold, and that you can have both, right? You don't have to sacrifice those values. If you could name your top three values in life, what would they be?
Yes, I have four my core values
Okay.
that have really truly like transformed my life. And it's like a filter that I make as much as I can through these filters, you know. So number one is like God and is it with his will, doing it his way with him. Number two is like hope in good things to come. I feel like I am a pretty optimistic person. I don't necessarily label myself that way, but I've been through a lot of crap. But I still have been able to turn it around to magnify who I am and what I'm able to do, which is fun. So hope in good things to come. Fun is an aspect that I realize I have to bring more into my life. I've been doing better, but like I still need to do better with that. Fun is such a huge aspect. And then intentional risk is one I actually recently added, which I think is faith, but like risk is something that I just kind of love.
My gosh, that's so good.
I know, right?
Oh,
Because
that's
I
so good.
realized when I'm not like risking things intentionally though, right? Like because for a long time I had this story that like I'm crazy and I still have a little bit of that, but I realized that like the Lord does ask us to risk. I really do believe. And like I think that's part of trusting him is like, is he gonna catch us when we fall? Yes, he will. Do we actually like do I actually believe it?
We're going to talk about poinsettias for just a second. No, I got a poinsettia as a gift from somebody in my neighborhood, and it was just before Christmas. And it was so meaningful to me because my grandma, who passed away a few years ago, loved poinsettias, and she always had one at Christmas time. And so it just was this tender mercy that I get this poinsettia, and it's still alive. I kill most everything that enters my home. I really try. And nothing survives. And so this poinsettia has survived, but it has grown so much. And so I had the realization yesterday, I have to repot this because it's grown too big for its current pot. And when you talk about intentional risk, it kind of reminds me of the poinsettia because I'm going to have to repot it, which is very uncomfortable and it's kind of risky, right? It might not survive that, especially if I'm the one doing it. But it has to in order to grow. It can't stay there. And so there has to be some of that risk that we're willing to put forward if we really want to grow.
Wow, I know. It's so fascinating when you say that. Because for me, risk for a while was like risking like higher amounts of money on myself and in programs. That was really when I started spending thousands of dollars on myself. Like, who does this? But then it became a little bit more normal. And so then it was like, okay, this isn't so scary. This is just status quo. And so then in my mind, that was still the risky thing, but it's not really anymore. But then it's like interesting how now this other area of like boundaries and like how do I better just like actually love myself and love others instead of being in this like pleasing, enabling dynamic, you know? That's been out of my comfort zone, which I just could never have seen that coming, right? You never really can see what that next step is until you're in it. You're like, oh, this is way worse.
And it's all just faith, right? You know that you're on the right path. You may not know how that path is going to go, but you have built up enough trust with God to feel like, okay, I can act. I can step forward in faith and go forward with hope, which, by the way, is literally the definition of prosperity. When you look in the Bible, and the Latin root of the word prosper is to go forward with hope. And then you dive even deeper, and hope actually just means expectation. And so it is literally, it's not just this wish or dream, like, oh, I wish that that would happen for me. It's an expectation. And so when we can trust God and have true hope and expectation that He's going to come through for us and He is going to deliver on His promises and He's going to take care of us, and that is prosperity.
That is so cool. Okay, so I have been wrestling with this so much because when I first started Line Academy, and that line of 6-month curriculum got 9 people into like a high ticket offer. So still I made like 50K, which has never happened before. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm on fire. Well, okay, let me back up. For some reason, I knew in this expectation thing that you said, it was like first time I'd really experienced it. I just for some reason knew. I was like, 10 people are going to, like, there's 10. I know there's 10. And I don't even know where that came. It was so I had 9 women signed up. Even till the day the cohort was starting like at 12:30, and I was like, there's gonna be one more, you know, I just knew it was so weird, like so much more faith that how do I harness that again? That's why I'm like bringing this up. 'Cause I'm like, how do you do it? And then we started and I was like, whatever, you know, there's gonna be 10. I just kept having this confidence. And then I was at my parents and I used to live at their house. And a couple days later, they gave me this check in the mail. Now, this came over the weekend before my cohort had started. And it was literally, guess what? A check for the exact amount of one student. And it was like this crazy story, this kind of weird situation that I hadn't gotten paid for something that I should have months later. Not even kidding you, like 8 or 9 months later, out of the blue. It was this expectation and this like co-creation of miracles. And I have literally been wrestling with like, how do I find that level? Because there's a level of faith, you know, but there's a level of expectation that creates different miracles. It really does. And I'm like, how do I get there again?
We get in our own way. We let the doubts and the fears and our own limiting beliefs about ourselves and about God kind of get in the way of that. So it's
Yeah,
not easy, but it's really amazing when you figure it out and do it.
totally. I know. I'm like, I want more of that in my life because it's fun. You know, like it's so cool.
That is basically what the law of attraction is. I feel like that's kind of a term that maybe the world uses to kind of explain the spiritual aspect of that. Well, I would like to ask you 5 rapid fire questions. What is the most adventurous thing that you've ever done?
See, I feel like I like risk, but I'm not like adventurous. No, what is the most adventurous thing? The thing that popped in my head was a couple in 2018 or 2019. I went to the Philippines, like a remote area of the Philippines. Well, now ex-husband, like he had served his mission in the Philippines, but like I was actually so scared to go there. I was like, are we gonna come back with parasites or like be able to like keep any food down? But actually the food was delicious and so fine. It was scary being in this foreign land where there was very remote. Anyways, it was fun though.
Oh, and what is a book that you could reread over and over?
Benjamin Hardy, an X is easier than two.
Yeah, everybody needs to read that.
To be honest, I read it over and over again.
What does living a fulfilling life look like to you?
I feel like honestly, what brings most fulfillment is just like feeling like I'm on the right track with God and like my purpose. And I think that's why sometimes these hard moments derail me so much because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, well, if I was living your path, why do I feel like I'm hurting people? So yeah, I think a fulfilling life is like, am I on the right track? Which just brings a sense of peace to me. I guess before this, we were talking about the Enneagram stuff and like the achieving part that I have. And for many years, I've felt like there's just really big things that I'm supposed to do. And so part of feeling fulfilled means moving in that direction. And for a lot of years, I didn't feel like I was actively doing that. Looking back, I'm like, what the Lord was preparing me, you know, but yeah, it feels more fulfilling now because I feel like I'm intentionally moving towards that.
How do you stay grounded when life gets overwhelming?
Well, I buy Ben and Jerry's and cry. That did not happen this weekend. Kidding. Um, okay. That actually doesn't happen that much anymore. Usually I actually don't love doing that, but I was like, you know what? I want to do this consciously instead of just like being a victim. No. What do I do to ground myself? I think there's just certain things like a part of my day that just depending on where I'm at, it's a different thing. A lot of times it is like turning to Heavenly Father, but sometimes it's hard to turn to him directly, like when I'm in an overwhelming spot. So I do have like a couple friends that I feel like I'll reach out to. I feel like a lot of people don't really understand my life at this point, if I'm being honest. I try to keep that circle close where I reach out to people that I know can support my faith in those moments because that's really what I want is to be like, okay, how do I make sense of this and how do I lean into faith in this situation? So that's a huge one to me is reaching out to just friends that know stuff that's going on. And over the last probably year, I've gotten a lot more consistent with like I am kind of like I don't love super strict routines, but I have noticed that consistency in my life really does bless me. Weird. And so things like exercise I've gotten a lot more consistent with. I'm studying the scriptures is something that I've been consistent with for years.
What is one thing on your bucket list that you haven't checked off yet?
Man, which one do I want to tell you? I'm being so dumb about this one. Like, I don't know. What's on my bucket list? Okay, what popped into my head, I'll just say my bucket list item is to marry in the temple. Like truly to just an incredible man who is my best friend. And that is top of the bucket list right now.
Love that. Well, if anybody listening, any options there for Alicia? Last question. What is coming up for you that you were excited about?
So many things. And that's probably why there's been so much opposition. With, I guess one thing is with Preparedness Project, like we've wrestled with for a long time, like how do we serve? But I don't think we were really in the energy of serving until recently. It's so hard, especially when you're trying to start a business and make it profitable. And like, how do you do that? You know, just even a month ago, things just kind of shifted and we were like, okay, we just want to serve and give for free at a really high level and like really, really, really. And we just did this free challenge for the first time, like gave away some of the best stuff that we've ever learned and saw a huge transformation in such a short time and saw the results, which was so fun for us because usually we don't hear. Sometimes we're like, oh, people follow us, but like, are you actually changing? Are you actually doing it? Because we don't get that feedback, which is so nice to get that feedback. And it's so fun to see how people when you invest in them, they want to continue investing in themselves. It feels so counterintuitive, but we finally feel like we're in this spot that we're serving them and they feel it, you know, and they want to continue forward, which means investing in themselves financially. So anyways, that's just been like a fun, like we've really hit a turning point recently with that. And so I'm excited to see where it goes. We have some really exciting things that I'm way pumped about with preparedness.
That's amazing. And we'll link both of your businesses in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. It was so fun talking to you.
Of course, it's been so fun.
If today's episode stirred something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Share your takeaways, leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe so you can keep uncovering what's possible when you stop proving and start becoming. You don't have to prove your worth. You're here to prove what's possible when you fully own who you were divinely designed to be. Live with faith, lead with boldness, prosper with purpose. Prove it.